A national scandal is unfolding before our eyes, which is not unusual these days, as an entire generation of students is being conned out of a real education by unscrupulous and greedy teachers' unions hell-bent on using the pandemic to their advantage. As a result, schools all over our country are still shut down, and kids have been forced into online learning, and the cost has been staggering. For instance, in Los Angeles, schools saw a sharp drop in kindergarten enrollment, about 6,000 students. In St. Paul, Minnesota, 40% of high school students have failing grades. You guys, 40%. And even higher percentage of kids in Houston, Texas, are failing at least 2 classes. In our nation's capital, there's been a 14 percentage point drop among black students in kindergarten through 2nd grade who met literacy standards. And just 20 miles away in Fairfax County, Virginia, a new survey of academic performance in schools found that F letter grades are up, are you ready for this, you guys, 83% this year. For Fairfax middle schoolers, it's even worse. Fs are up 300%. This is right, not going from
the pandemic's disruption to your children's education, to your jobs and incomes, and to your other caregiving responsibilities has been tremendous. We also could not be prouder of how our students and staff have stepped up to learn and to teach in new ways, and how everyone has adapted to these challenges.
Wow, how everyone has adapted, right? This is not like going from a B student to a C student here. This system is literally failing the students. Children are being left behind. Special needs students can't get the help they need, yet the teachers' unions want the schools to stay closed. Of course, those very same teachers' unions will see an even more power framework under the Biden administration.
When we win this election, we're going to get the support you need and the respect you deserve. You don't just have a partner in the White House, you'll have an NEA member in the White House.
Well, that should be concerning to some people. And joining me now is Asra Nomani, Fairfax County parent and former Georgetown professor. Also with me is Cynthia Garrett, education activist and founder of Cynthia Garrett Ministries and author of I Choose Victory. That is a great title, Cynthia. Thank you both for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, I was just in relating that to our audience, Asra, the numbers are shocking. We've had a lot of shocking news this year, especially out of Fairfax. How are parents doing? And isn't there, I would think that there might be an uprising, or there should be, to deal with the entire school board. What's going on out there?
Oh, parents are so angry. I mean, you can see behind me, we've got the man that you just heard is Scott Brabrand, the superintendent of Fairfax County. Parents now have this bumper sticker on their cars through Northern Virginia. They have Fire Brabrand, Audit FCPS. I was just so angry listening to your segment just now, the data on these poor kids, literally poor kids who are failing now because we have a superintendent and a school board that is failing our children. Scott Brabrand has famously said through this year that equity is at the heart of his initiative for Fairfax County Public Schools. And so what he has done is he has become an activist instead of an educator. And what he is doing is failing the kids that he's supposedly trying to reach. There's so much hypocrisy. Usually the data is about 3 to 4% for kids in middle school who are failing. So right now, the number of kids that are economically disadvantaged and failing is 1 out of 5.
Wow.
Hispanic kids, 1 out of 4. The English language learners, 1 out of 3. And our boys, 1 out of 10. That's unbelievable. And so what we have is a lost year, just as you said. It's a political scandal. It's a travesty. And our superintendent is making more than $300,000 a year for this
Remarkable
performance. It's horrible. It's just so outrageous.
You know, there's so many different fronts to this, Cynthia. You've got the teachers' unions and political interests there. You've got the impact psychologically on children if you get an F. If you fail at a young age, this sets into motion attitudes and a framework. In addition, of course, to the people getting rich in this framework, as though we're useless or we're throwaways. What is your take, Cynthia, on what parents can do, considering the long-term impact. This isn't just 1 year that's lost, but the psychological impact on children overall.
Well, you're right, Tammy. The psychological impact is incredible because you and I both know that, when you get an F and you get a failing grade, the word fail is sort of on your forehead, right? So students tend to withdraw. They become more and more sort of resistant to even learning. And then, so the inequity gap has just gotten wider and wider. So kids who were already struggling, now they're way behind. And I think so much of what parents can do has got to do with really and truly getting upset and showing up.
Yeah.
We've got to start to show up in our schoolrooms, in the classrooms, at the board meetings. We've got to show up, and we have to speak up, and we have to get angry, and we have to start to demand change.
Well, I'd like both of you to hear a little bit about what Joe Biden had to say about the reopening of schools. Listen to this for a second.
What will you do to get kids back in school? How much will you be working the phones and working with governors and mayors?
It takes a lot of money to get them back. The estimates are $150 to $200 billion for the year it would take to safely open our schools.
Sir, I mean, doesn't that say it all? Suddenly it is about money, about saving money, about a bunch of things that really have nothing to do with worrying about the kids. And America in general is agreeing that there's no reason to not have these schools open. Isn't that kind of a confession about what this is really about?
Well, what's lost in this is our children. I mean, that's what's such a tragedy in all of this. Right here is this book that our superintendent paid $20,000 to have its author speak for 1 hour to our school district.
Wow.
1 hour. So just imagine that he's just putting in safety mechanisms right now for our school system and yet failing our kids. There's a young man watching you tonight. His name is Teddy. He woke up at 5:45 a.m. for the last sign up for the last school board meeting because he wanted to beg the superintendent and the school board to open up schools. He was so excited. He was going to go back a couple weeks ago. And on the eve of his return for transitional, like a little experiment, canceled. School was canceled. They're just playing around with kids' lives. And meanwhile, they're going after this social justice activism. My son goes to the high school. Scott Brabrand, the superintendent, has been at war with this high school's parents and students to change admissions to, quote, improve equity. And meanwhile, he has such injustice in the way that he's actually educating our kids. And so it's a failure. They get an F grade. And our kids, you should feel no shame.
We need to think about, what is the biggest factor, Cynthia, in school shutdowns? We've got a study from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They found that the presence of a teachers union was more of a deciding factor for Wisconsin school districts choosing to direct their classes virtually, not the extent of the pandemic itself in the community. That's apparently consistent with national research. So what they're saying is this really has nothing to do, Cynthia, with science or what's best for your kids. What's your take on that?
Well, we know it has nothing to do with science. I mean, the science has always said that children are not really the ones at risk. And so I think that a lot of this, in my estimation, I mean, I look at it and honestly, I just go, well, I know we've been lazy in our school districts. And I know that there's been a lot of money thrown at what's called the problem, fixing the problem. But honestly, part of the problem, I think, is that we have a lot of people who really and truly like, in some sense, what's going on.
Yeah.
That may sound harsh, but that's how I see it.
But I think you're right. That's what a lot of us have seen. It's a big question. It's been 8 months. This is now very serious. A lot of people are still being moved through fear. But ladies, I want to thank you because now this is about the children, right? This is about the next generation, long-term impacts. Ladies, thanks for being with us.